Welcome to the Muscle Expert Podcast with Ben Pakulski, one of the world's top professional bodybuilders, an expert on human performance and mindset mastery. Ben dives deep to deliver the strategies of the top experts to upgrade your body, mind, muscle, strength, performance, biochemistry, and how to become the upgraded modern man. Join us on benpakulski.com to learn the cutting-edge techniques to take control of your body, your brain, and create your greatest life.
Hey, welcome back to the Muscle Expert Podcast. I am your host, Ben Pakulski, and today we interview Dr. Kristin Comella. She is a stem cell researcher and doctor living in South Florida, and I'm absolutely lit about this interview, as you guys will hear in my voice when I'm interviewing Dr. Comella. I got the opportunity to sit down with her at Paleo FX in Austin, Texas, and talk about the implications of stem cells and why you care. Stem cells seem to be the absolute fountain of youth in regenerative medicine, in repairing any type of damaged tissue in your body. The implications that Dr. Comella talks about are absolutely fascinating to me. And it's also really interesting how she's literally getting attacked right now. If you want to wait till the end of the podcast to hear about that, people are trying to shut her down because of what stem cells could be doing to potentially heal people. It's very, very interesting. So things like fat cells versus bone marrow stem cells. We get into talking about how she's actually doing injections directly into the cerebral spinal fluid so it can penetrate people's brains to actually help with recovery from things like post-traumatic stress or concussions. Really, really fascinating conversation. And most importantly, why we care if we're just trying to live our greatest life. Stem cells seem to be really, really important in the potential extension of life. And now we're not going to talk about that specifically because that's obviously a bold claim. But as far as regenerative medicine, there's a huge implication there. So you guys are going to love this podcast with Dr. Kristin Comella. It's a short one. We kept it really, really concise, but really, really action-packed. Listen all the way to the end. And as always, if you know someone who's got an injury, if you know somebody who maybe has torn a muscle, if you know somebody who just wants to live the longest life possible and is interested in regenerative medicine, refer them to this podcast. And you can also refer them to Dr. Kristin Comella. Have a great one. All right, what's up, ladies and gents? Muscle Expert Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Pakulski, and today we have Dr. Kristin Comella, and we're going to dive into stem cells, which is an extremely interesting area for me. As you guys mostly will know, in 2014, I had both triceps repaired for having massive tears. They were not operable, and that was a disappointment to me at the time. I had so much pain, and they said, Doctor, unfortunately, there's nothing I can do. I can't operate. So I went to somebody else, and he said, well, we could try some stem cells. And at the time, I mean, you could tell me if I was wrong, but at the time I was pretty new. I don't think there's a lot of people doing it, and I didn't know if it was going to work. I was pretty concerned that maybe my career was over. And within 3 months, I had no pain. I had complete function restored, and strength was starting to come back. And I saw some ultrasounds like, wow, this tissue has actually completely regenerated, which was massively refreshing for me, and it was a great eye-opener that we could do this stuff. And this is why this is such an interesting area of conversation today. So thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me. So our company was actually started in 1999. We treated our first patient in 2001. Since that time, we've treated more than 10,000 patients. But I would say over the last 5 to 10 years, there's really kind of been a boom. And we've discovered that we can apply stem cells to so many different indications. So not just orthopedics like what you were demonstrating. I think there's so much that we can do to help patients avoid surgeries, or for patients who don't necessarily qualify for surgery or don't want to get surgery. There's so many things we can do to repair tendons, ligaments, and also when they start to have damage to their cartilage, either from aging, wear and tear, or some sort of acute injury. But also taking this into systemic issues, things like diabetes, heart disease, lung disease, and neurological conditions, issues in the brain.
So I think the first and most important thing that we address is tell people what stem cells are and what do they do and how do they work. And because I think that's a little bit ambiguous right now in most people's minds. Like they hear this amazing term like stem cells, it's kind of sounds a little bit strange and you know, alien-like, and they're like, well, tell me what it does.
Sure. So every single one of us have stem cells inside our body. And the main purpose of these cells is to maintain and heal tissue where they reside. Your stem cells are hard at work inside your body all the time. In fact, if you didn't have stem cells, you could only live for about an hour because your tissue would exhaust and nothing would replace that tissue. So when we talk about stem cell therapy and regenerative medicine, what we're trying to do is tap into your natural body healing mechanism. And we can take stem cells where they may exist in high amounts, and it just happens to be that the highest amount of stem cells is in your fat tissue. So we could take
why is that?
So the vascular supply that's in our fat tissue is actually where all of the stem cells are. All of the microvessels that are in our body have these cells that coat, and they're called pericytes. And the pericyte is the precursor to the stem cell. Okay. So whenever you have an injury, they actually let go and become regenerative.
Is that just because fat is everywhere, so that your brain is or your body's evolved to say, hey, this is going to be everywhere. We need
this is a good place to store. Yeah. And whenever you get an injury, if you took a knife and cut your hand right here, you would start getting a lot of stem cells going to that area to repair it. So we're just going to tap into this natural healing mechanism in your body, take those cells where they're sitting in storage, and relocate them to where you may need them. So in your case, they were placed into the tendon that was damaged, and you can heal any sort of issue that needs a little extra stem cells to that area.
So we all have them. We all have fat. Someone who has less fat has less stem cells?
Not necessarily. So what we find is that we can actually tell a lot about a patient by looking at their fat. So a patient that eats a very healthy kind of diet, lots of good vegetables and clean meats, et cetera, more of a paleo style diet, will have a very dense fat that has a lot more stem cells in it, as opposed to someone who eats a lot of grains or a lot of sugars, refined type sugars. They will have more of a fluffy, kind of buttery looking fat that doesn't necessarily have as many stem cells in it. So when you are creating more fat in your body, it means that you're storing more toxins, and that's getting stored in the fat cells. That doesn't necessarily change the amount of stem cells that you have.
Super fascinating. So if we already have stem cells, why then do we need to isolate them and re-administer them?
Yeah, so when you get an injury or as you age, your stem cells are naturally going to areas and repairing. So you may eventually repair, but sometimes we get in a chronic state of inflammation, and inflammation creates more inflammation. So you need just a little extra help to break that cycle. So that's where we would want to do an additional stem cell treatment to really help that healing cascade along.
So you mentioned as we age, we have less stem cells. Is there some intervention that you suggest when somebody comes into your office and says, hey, I want to get this therapy? Maybe you notice their stem cells are low. Is there some dietary or exercise intervention that you recommend to people to increase their stem cells?
So I think there's a lot of research now on fasting and different things that you can do to help boost your stem cell. We also like hyperbarics. These kind of things can help to boost. But one of the biggest things that we recommend to patients is to detoxify their life. Get rid of the toxins. And toxins can be present. One of the biggest presence is in your food and water. So address that, get your diet cleaned up, eating foods that are going to be less inflammatory, but then also detoxifying from a mental perspective as well, because toxins can present in so many different ways, and psychologically, these toxins might be producing more cortisol in our body, which again is going to lead to more fat inside and storage.
Amazing. So one of the questions I asked you just before we started the podcast is what you're most interested in what's the most exciting part of being in stem cells right now, which, as I said, I think is one of the most intriguing new developments, or at least new to me, in the entire health space, is because it seems as though this is actually the fountain of youth. Like if you're actually trying to repair something, if you're actually trying to improve longevity, we have people doing IVs, we have people doing direct into the cerebrospinal fluid, as you said.
Yes.
What is the most interesting thing for you?
Yeah, I definitely would say the neurological cases that we're working on are the most exciting thing. I think we're one of the only groups in the world trying to address neurological conditions. So this can be anything from Parkinson's, MS, traumatic brain injuries. Think about NFL players. Every Monday morning after their game, they should be getting a dose of stem cells to help with any of the trauma, the injuries, especially for the brain.
Would that be something they'd want to do preemptively, like before the game, or just you think post would be best?
Post is best just because that's that's when they're going to be in active inflammation. So that's when the stem cells are going to help to bring that down and to repair any damage that has been done. So what we do is we actually inject the cells directly into the cerebrospinal fluid in the lower portion of the back, and that fluid will circulate along the spine up into the brain. And so if you have any inflammation going on in your brain, these cells can help to reduce that inflammation and start to repair any damage that's been done.
Is this something that people would want to start doing on a regular basis, or is this like you get it done once and you're going to see sustained benefits over a period of time?
Yeah, I think it depends. If you have an injury, for example, an orthopedic injury, it might be the type of thing where you get one injection and that repairs the damage. But if you have something that's more a degenerative disease or more chronic or bone-on-bone arthritis, this might need more than one treatment, and you can come back and address. If it took you decades to create that damage, it's going to take you more than one dose to repair that. For me personally, I've actually been dosing myself with stem cells for about 5 years. I get a dose every 6 to 12 months, just an IV dose to help address any systemic issues that may be going on, more of an anti-aging type approach, bring down inflammation.
Yes.
But then also, if I have anything going on, I tend to be someone who likes to work out a lot. So, you tweak your knee here and there, get a dose of stem cells before that becomes chronic and really a problem.
So tell me about that. So this sounds like the ultimate biohack, right? It sounds like if I can turn back the clock and kind of slow down the aging process, this is probably what it is. So tell me about what types of benefits you're actually noticing since you've been doing this consistently.
Yeah,
for
so
5
when
years.
I do a systemic IV delivery, usually what I can see is an increased vascular supply, and this usually means like my nails grow better, my hair is better, my skin quality is better, and that's just because it's helping with what's called angiogenesis, increasing our blood supply. And what I did about 2 years ago was an injection in the vaginal wall. So I'm a mother of two babies, and as such, I had urinary incontinence, especially stress-induced. So, jumping jacks or sneezing would make me pee my pants. So by doing an injection in the vaginal wall, this can actually strengthen and increase the blood supply there. So I no longer pee my pants, but then also this can be for sexual enhancement. You're going to get better lubrication and better blood supply, which means for better orgasms. And this applies to men as well. So we recently did a treatment for Ben Greenfield, injection directly into the penis to help improve vascular supply, so better erections. As we age, our blood supply shuts down.
Can you walk me down like the physiology of how that's actually happening by injecting stem cells, improving the vascular supply?
Yeah, so the stem cells themselves, and this is how they work inside our body, will actually help to stimulate what's called an immunomodulatory response, which means that they send signals to the rest of the body to come to an area. Right. So when you inject into an area that has blood supply that has starting to shut down, it calls other cells to the area, which will then help to build that blood supply back up. That whole process is called angiogenesis.
Hey, I want to interrupt this podcast to bring you a message from our sponsor, ATP Labs. You guys know I've aligned myself with ATP Labs because they're so considerate of what goes into their products. They're literally sourcing the best quality ingredients on the planet, and organic vegan protein is no exception. So these guys have gone and sourced 100% organic vegan protein, and most of the organic vegan proteins on the market are not 100% organic, and a lot of vegan proteins are not organic at all, and that should be a consideration for someone who's consuming a lot of vegetable proteins because glyphosate is a massive consideration. More importantly than that, ATP is bringing literally the best quality ingredients on the planet. I know a lot of people make that claim, but I literally have been to the ATP Labs manufacturing facility, seen everything they bring in, see the meticulous attention to detail, and I absolutely love it. So if you want to check out ATP Lab products, you can get a special discount when you use the code BEN10 on checkout. And if you sign up for the VIP newsletter, you'll also get free shipping, which is awesome. So check out atplab.com and remember the code BEN10. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. Now, is there, to me, this sounds like, okay, I need to buy and invest in a stem cell clinic and do it to myself every day.
Sure.
Is there any foreseen negative effects? Like, if is this the type of thing I want to do often, or would my body become depleted in stem cells, or would there be a negative effect to increasing this immunomodulating response?
Yeah. So, certainly anytime you do any medical procedure, there are risks. If you pierce the skin, there's a risk of infection. Typical risks that are associated with any medical. And also, this is considered new. It's still considered experimental, so there are unknown risks. Nobody's really done large dosing studies to determine, what's the most appropriate appropriate. Now, we are using your own stem cells, so there's really no risk of rejection because they do come from you, and we're putting it back into you. So we've done, like I said, more than 10,000 cases. We did publish the world's largest safety paper, which was almost 700 patients, demonstrating that this could be safe in a variety of different methods of delivery, including IV, intrathecal, which is for the brain, intravaginal, into penis, into the scalp for hair loss. So a lot of different ways to deliver, and in that publication, we showed a very strong safety profile.
Super interesting. Now, as on our little walk up here, we discussed different ways of accessing stem cells. So we talked about bone marrow, we talked about fat, we talked about amniotic.
Sure.
Can you just tell our listeners a little bit about the
So
differences
bone marrow
there?
has been around a lot longer than fat. Fat's kind of the new kids on the block. So a lot of physicians are still using bone marrow. I think eventually people may start to convert over to fat. And actually, I used to be in the bone marrow space as well. One of the main reasons that we prefer fat is because we can get about 500 times more stem cells from fat than what we get from bone marrow. In addition, your bone marrow tends to be very high in white blood cells, and white blood cells are pro-inflammatory. So we want to try and avoid any sort of additional inflammation. Usually when a patient presents to us, they're already inflamed. We don't need to contribute to additional inflammation. So by using the cells from the fat, it's very low in white blood cells, and it has much more stem cells in it. So we find that we can get better results. With regards to the amniotype products, these are birth tissue products, and they're tissue bank products. And according to the current laws with the FDA, in order to stay compliant, these have to be an acellular product, which means no living cells.
Right.
So they're going to be more growth factors, cytokines, and they would be probably more appropriate for smaller acute type injuries, and they're not really going to be for your chronic injuries or your chronic degenerative diseases.
Now, this may be a completely ignorant question, but is there any differentiation of stem cells, or is like one stem cell from one part of your body going to benefit every cell, or is there something you guys need to do to make sure, hey, it's going to this cell, or is it just going to kind of go wherever you inject it or wherever your body needs it?
Yeah, so the cells that we're most interested in are called mesenchymal stem cells, and they have the ability to differentiate, if you put them in a petri dish, down various pathways. They can form bone, cartilage, muscle, even nerve.
Yep.
And when you put them into the body, what happens is they will actually home to areas of injury. So when we put them into somebody's body, we actually don't get to decide where they go. Your body calls for them where they're needed the most. So by placing them into circulation, they're going to take a first pass through the lungs and the heart, and then they're going to circulate to where you are signaling for the most amount of inflammation. And then they kick up what's called a paracrine effect or immunomodulatory effect, and they send out signals to the rest of your body and call more cells to the area.
So are you guys doing anything to influence that? Are you causing any localized tissue damage to say, hey, like poke at this guy a little bit?
Yeah, no, not really. We don't need to. We just allow the cells to go where they're going to go and let that normal process that's going on in your body occur.
What type of benefit have you seen in people in doing it to the spine as far as like decreasing the brain inflammation, improving neurological function?
So we've had patients who were wheelchair bound or even unable to talk because of neurological damage out of their wheelchair and having full conversations. It kind of depends on what's going on, but one patient that I'm thinking of in particular, she had a traumatic brain injury. She had fallen 2 stories, and this was 2 years after her accident. So she was very chronic in her state. She was wheelchair bound, could not talk, and when she presented to us, we did the first injection. She came back 3 months later to get another treatment of stem cells, and she was walking without any sort of assistance, talking in full sentences, telling us about the day she was injured, telling us about her children. She was a young mother, and this is the kind of stuff that's going to change medicine as we know it. Traditional medicine would have said this wasn't possible.
That's absolutely incredible. That's one treatment?
That was with one treatment, yeah.
What implications do you believe this has? Like, is this going to start to eliminate conventional medicine?
No, I mean, I think there's going to be space for both types of medicine, but I think this will change medicine as we know it. A lot of things that may be treated with surgery and or drugs, we may not have to go to that as the first step. We may try some of these more natural therapies first and help to break the chronic inflammation cycle for patients. This is going to revolutionize medicine as we know it.
Is the government intervening in any way?
They are. We're actually in some discussions right now with the FDA. That can be a little challenging. I think anytime you bring forward a disruptive technology, there's going to be naysayers. And also when you threaten a multi-billion-dollar market, aka Big Pharma, sometimes you can get a target on your back. But I'm going to fight for this. Patients have a right to use their own body to heal. And I know that makes me a target, and that's okay. I can take it. I only needed to see 1 or 2 patients get out of their wheelchair to know that we're doing the right thing.
So what can we do as health advocates to support you and allowing us to really live our greatest life?
Yeah, tell the government that they don't own your body. Your body's not made of drugs. It's made of cells, and you have a right to use those cells as you see fit.
Mm-hmm. Are you creating a support network for you and your team and your business so that we can literally get behind you and become advocates for what you do?
Yes. So one of the organizations that I'm currently serving as the president of is the Academy of Regenerative Practices. We've started what's called a legal fund to help back this and to get support and to tell the government, this is our body and we can choose to do what we want with it. And my goal is to protect the rights of patients and to protect the rights of practitioners to assist their patients.
How financially viable is this for me or us as a patient to say, like, hey, I want to get this done? Like, is it ridiculously cost prohibitive?
Not at all. So treatments typically range between $5,000 to $10,000, depending on what you're getting. And when you think about it, your most valuable possession is your health. And
Sure.
if it means you can avoid surgery and the downtimes associated with that, $5,000 is a drop in the bucket.
Right. And go ahead.
Yeah, having your cells stored in a bank for future use, should you need them, I'd spend that all day long.
Perfect. That was one of my questions. Is at what point in our lives are we, I mean, I know the answer to this, but at what point are we most prevalent or are we most abundant in stem cells compared to when did they really start to drop off?
Yeah, I mean, I think regardless of your age, you've got stem cells hard at work. So even if you're in your 80s and 90s, you still have stem
You
cells.
just concentrate them?
Yeah, we would just, take, and then we can grow them up and get additional doses. So even if you're like, oh, I'm too old. No, you're not. You're alive. You're talking to me. You still have stem cells. We can get them. Ideally, if we got them when you were younger, that would be great. It's not necessarily realistic. So you're never going to be as young as you are today. So may as well get your cells stored now. And also, you never know when you're going to need those. So it's kind of like an insurance policy. If you have a heart attack tomorrow, you're not necessarily going to get clearance to go get your stem cells out. So having your cells available should you need them is fantastic.
At what age should people start? I'm thinking about my kids. I'm like, okay, is it reasonable for me to start putting my 4 and 6-year-old stem cells away?
I think probably not. You probably want to wait until they're, post-puberty. It's just not necessarily realistic to start doing unnecessary medical procedures on young people.
It's just like pulling a little bit of their fat tissue,
It's
right?
pulling a little bit of their fat, yeah. So we typically don't see patients until they are an adult, but more just because it's not that it's not good for them, but it's more of a liability with children.
Yeah. Is it the same cost to have it stored? You guys obviously do that as well?
We
storing
do,
of the stem cells?
yeah.
So obviously the administration is one step and the removal is obviously the first step.
Sure.
Cost as far as if just getting it stored. Are you able to talk about that?
So we usually do that first dose no matter what.
Right.
So, you're going to get that first dose, and then the storage is typically about a $3,000 add-on. So, like if your first treatment was, say, $5,000, it would be then $3,000 extra. So then the whole thing, everything plus storage, would be around $8,000 to $9,000.
And how long would that store for?
We can store them indefinitely. We're putting it in liquid nitrogen, so they can store for decades. It's very cold temperatures.
Right. Would this be the type of thing where, I want to store like a new batch every year so I have unlimited amounts for the next 300 years? Or
Yeah, possibly. So from one pull, we can usually get about 20 to 25 doses, depending on, how healthy you are.
Right.
We find some of the least healthy fat is from smokers. Their stem cells tend to not grow well at all, as well as people who are heavy drinkers. Patients who have a very healthy diet, even like paleo style, or stay on a anti-inflammatory diet, we can sometimes get as many as 50 doses from one pull.
Wow. How important is exercise in maintaining and increasing your stem cell pool?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you are doing stimulation to your vascular health, your cardio health, and helping your oxygen supply, you're going to find that you're going to have more stem cells, and keeping those circulating is key.
This is absolutely amazing. Dr. Kristin, high five.
Thank you.
I'm not giving you a handshake. I'm going to give you a high five and a hug. Stem cells. Can you tell everyone where they can find you, the name of your business?
Yes,
and,
it's usstemcellclinic.com, and we have several clinics throughout the country and really throughout the world. So if you're watching this from another country, we can help you there too.
I'm definitely going to head down to Fort Lauderdale and get some stem cells pulled out and probably not have my penis injected unless Dr. Kristin could convince me I need it. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And guys, if you want to check out more from Dr. Kristin, definitely head over to that website. And thank you very much for listening. So what do you think of my interview with Dr. Kristin Comella? As you heard in my voice, I absolutely loved this conversation. Stem cells are such an interesting area, and Dr. Comella is literally on the cutting edge. Everything out of her mouth, I completely resonate with. I thought she did a great job of being very, very clear, concise with her answers. It really got me intrigued about getting down there to get some stem cells for myself and put away for myself and my family and everybody else, because you never know when something can happen as far as injuries, literally as far as any type of health ailments. Why not put away some of those stem cells? Check out Dr. Kristin Comella. If you want a link to her and her website, it's going to be in the show notes at benpakulski.com/podcasts. I want to give one more shout out to our sponsor, Thrive Market. And Thrive Market is now offering listeners of the Muscle Expert podcast a 25% off discount on your first order when you sign up right now at thrivemarket.com/muscleexpert. You can also find that in the show notes at benpakulski.com/podcast. Have an amazing day. Live your greatest life in your greatest body.